in the desert. Our universe is like a speck. Like a speck. Now, we are on an Earth, which is a speck, in a solar system, which is a speck on the outer spiral of our galaxy, which itself is a speck in the universe, which is a speck before the kursi, which is a speck before the arsh. Now, if I said to anyone, oi, speck, even if I said it nicely, oh, beloved speck, oh, noble speck, oh, good speck. But if I call you a speck, it doesn't matter how many nice things I put with it, calling a person a speck is not a nice thing. But you know what? We are specks. I wouldn't be lying if I called you a speck, and you wouldn't be lying if you called me a speck. But still, we don't like it. How about then if we said that God is like a speck, whose kursi extends over the heavens and the earth, which is like a ring before his throne? So how about God? You say that God is like a speck? In fact, you said God became a speck on a speck in a speck in a speck. That's equal with God. That is insulting God. Common sense. That is common sense. Now, some people say, no, we don't believe that Jesus is God. We believe he's the Son of God. But that's not any better. That's not any better. Saying that God has a son is not much better. That's still insulting God. That's still saying that the child of God, the Son of God, is what? Some insignificant creature? Some speck on the earth? And I don't mean here to belittle Jesus, alayhi salam. Okay? Of course, with Allah, he is an honored slave. But that's what we are. We are creatures of God. We are the creation of God. We are the slaves of God. The only difference is, what sort of person are you? Do you believe in God? Do you insult God? Or do you honor God? Do you obey God or you disobey God? That is the only difference between the human beings. Not your caste, not your color, not whether you're middle class, upper class, lower class. Okay? None of those things matter to Allah at all. What matters is, are you faithful? Do you honor God? Do you praise God? Do you obey God? That's it. If you do that, God loves you. If you don't, he doesn't. It's that simple. It's that simple. So you're either one or the other. All the other things are artificial and of no concern to God. So this is what is important. So we are all creatures of God. But what does it mean, son of God? Think about that. I mean, I remember there was an Anglican priest who came to the same conclusion. He was saying, what on earth is this supposed to mean, son of God? He thought about it himself, and he realized that, what is that supposed to mean? You see, when we use the term son, what do we mean by that? My son, right? So first meaning is the literal meaning, begotten son. The word begotten means born of the act of sexual intercourse. Are we saying that God had sex with a woman and had sons? God does not have sons and daughters. God does not have intimate relations with, and this is why the Quran asks, if God had a son, who is God's wife? Because presumably God would not make fornication and adultery illegal for us and then practice it himself. Does God? But of course, even the concept of God having intercourse is absurd. So obviously God did not have a literal son. God did not beget a son. All right? Because my son is human like me. By the way, if you have any doubts, you can study early Christian theology. Some early Christians, one of the evidences they actually brought to claim that Jesus was God is exactly this argument. They said, my son is human like me, therefore God's son must be divine like God. That's exactly the argument they brought. Meaning they actually had this idea that God must have literally begotten a son. Which is ascribing a calamity. Allah refutes this time and time and time. In fact, one of the reasons that the Quran has been revealed is to refute those people who say that Allah has a son. This is actually mentioned. Allah mentions this in Surah Al-Kahf. One of the reasons why Allah has revealed the Quran is to refute those people. And by the way, this is something that many pagans had this idea. Many pagans had this idea. Zeus, for example. Zeus had mistresses and wives and sun gods and, So, for example, Hercules was the son of Zeus. So they had this idea that their sons would marry and, have mistresses from amongst women of the earth, and these half-gods would be born, and so on and so forth. This was their idea. It's a pagan idea. It's not a monotheistic idea. Which, by the way, indicates that really Christianity is so much of it taken from paganism. Anyway, I don't want to get, because I could go quite far into talking about that, but it's another topic. So the Son of God. Okay, so we say, most Christians would actually say, no, we don't believe that God. Of course we don't believe God is, that Jesus literally is the actual, literally begotten Son of God. So we say, well, what do you mean? Do you mean God adopted Jesus as a son? Again, it doesn't make any sense. Let me give you an example, right? If I brought with me today a goldfish, yeah? I have a little thing, and I bring with me a goldfish, and I say, everybody, this is Jonah, my son. So it's a goldfish. Oh, it's my son. He eats with me at the table. He has a bedroom in the house. And according to the new adoption laws that they've just passed in England, very liberal, the papers are coming through next week. He's my son. Now, you would say, look, that's a fish. You're a human being. You can't have a fish as your son, because the fish is not like you. But let me ask another question then. How is a human being like God? The human beings who are specks on an earth that is a speck. In fact, isn't it true that I am actually more like a fish than I'm like God? Isn't it true that any human being has more similarity to a fish than they have to God? You see, the fish is born and the fish dies. Human beings are born and human beings die. The fish need to eat and they need to get rid of what they eat. Human beings need to eat and they get rid of what they eat. Right? The vision of the fish is limited. My vision is limited. The fish can only remember so much. I can only remember so much. My knowledge is limited. My powers are limited. My ability is limited. This is what I share in common with the fish. Whereas God, His seeing is without limit. His knowledge is perfect. God is never born and God never dies. God is eternal. How am I like God? In what way am I like God? Even a fish, maybe not a fish, but certainly an animal can even show compassion to its child. I don't know, I saw the most remarkable program, nature program. I can't even remember where I saw it. And I was absolutely transfixed. It was about the crossing in the Serengetis. You have two parts. You have Masai Mara, and it's the plains where all the animals are in Kenya and Tanzania. And there's this famous place where the wildebeest and in fact, not just the wildebeest, all the animals, the zebras, the wildebeest, they cross the river and the crocodiles get them. You must have seen that. Amazing thing. There was one, and they were following this one baby wildebeest. It was crossing with its mother. And we know how the Prophet ﷺ said that, that Allah has divided His mercy into 100 parts. One part He put on this earth. Now the one part of Allah's mercy is even so the love that the mother has for the child. Right? And I saw in this thing how this baby wildebeest couldn't climb up to the other side. This baby wildebeest could not reach to the other side of the river. And in fact, it fell down and it ended up being washed down the street. Somehow the crocodile didn't eat it. And it ended up going right back to the other side. The mother had made it. Do you know what this mother did? You know what the mother wildebeest did? She went back across the river. She went back across the river, facing the hippopotamuses, right, which were attacking them, the crocodiles which were eating them. Did she care? No. She went right back across to go after her little baby. That is the compassion in an animal, in a creature. So even animals can have compassion. Doesn't make them divine. So what do we mean, Son of God? What does this mean? Again, no. We are creatures of God. We are the creatures of God. We are the servants of God. All of this is to show us, look at the things that people worship. Look at the things they put their faith and their trust. These are the false gods. None of these things are truly worthy of us worshipping them. Now, I've got two more things that I want to mention. Only two more things, and I won't dwell on them for long. But two more categories. The next category I want to deal with is race, tribalism. This is a false god as well. And the people that are used in the Quran as an example, they're not the only people who have this quality, but the ones who are used as example for this are the Jews. Because amongst them are many who think that they are better purely because of being a Jew. It's racism. They think they are God's chosen, favored people purely by virtue of their ancestry. And God refused this utterly and completely in the Quran. And it has been completely and utterly refuted by the Prophet Muhammad. No human being is better than another human being based upon who they are descended from. And of course the Jews are not the only people who suffer this delusion. And of course I mean to say, by the way, not all the Jews, because a true pious Jew would never believe such a thing. But in fact the Prophet Muhammad said that you Muslims, the ones that you Muslims you resemble mostly, you have the closest resemblance to, are the children of Israel. You are most like them. And you find, unfortunately, many Muslims have the same idea. I'm better because my ancestors were Muslim. Not because of me and what sort of Muslim I am and how I follow my religion. No, what do you know? You're a new Muslim. I mean, this is what I've seen it myself firsthand. 20 years I've been a Muslim, and I experienced a lot of it from the Muslim community. What do you know? You're a new Muslim. My ancestors were Muslims. My great whatever. As if, so what? What's that got to do with anything? Subhanallah, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said the first time he publicly called people to Islam, he called the different tribes, these tribes who he was related to, he called his own tribe, even his own daughter Fatima. He said, I cannot help you at all against Allah. Meaning you being my daughter will not help you one single little